Greetings, everybody. Dave DeWalt here, founder and CEO of NightDragon. We're coming to you live from the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center here in San Francisco at the RSA Cybersecurity Conference, one of the biggest cybersecurity conferences in the world. And today I get to do something special, and I get to interview CEOs. As a former CEO, I just love this. I get to interview the 11 hottest cybersecurity companies and their CEOs. So we're a little fun today. And today I have Wayne Jackson here, one of my favorite people, somebody I've known for, I believe, over 20 years at this point, Wayne. And this man has an incredible background, founding now 3 companies. One of them was Riverbed Technology. Another one was SourceFire that he eventually sold to Cisco for $2.7 billion. And now he's been working on his latest, hottest company called Sonatype. Sonatype since 2010, Wayne. You have perseverance like nobody I know. But congratulations on all your success with Sonatype so far. I know you're now over 100 million in the 100 club at this point. Talk a little bit about what does Sonatype do, just for the audience to hear first and everybody get acclimated to you.
Sure. So just a little bit of background.
Yeah.
So software, as Mark Andreessen said, is eating the world. Innovation is the key to differentiation in almost every industry. And what's interesting that's changed over the course of our careers is that people don't write software so much as they assemble it. And in that context, all of a sudden, there are these things called software supply chain. And how do developers know which things to pick? How do we assure organizations that their supply chains are of the high integrity that they need? And that's really our focus. So helping the world have a better software supply chain infrastructure.
And it can't come soon enough, because I believe that software supply chains is one of the most vulnerable things we have in the world of cybersecurity. We've seen a lot of attacks. Talk about one or two of the famous ones and give the audience a little sense of this problem.
Yeah, there have been a few of them, and they have sort of a similar pattern. People know about software vulnerability most about things like Log4j. And Log4j was a major incident. Caused lots of breaches, but Log4j was basically a coding error, right? And coding errors happen. We make the mistakes, we learn from them, we move to a different version.
It's a pretty large coding error, but yeah.
Very large coding error, but it wasn't intentional. Right? What's interesting about this new generation of supply chain attacks is that they're very much intentional. And so back in the old days, when physical supply chains were a thing, or I think they still are, obviously, but when attacks against those were a thing, it took a lot of really incredible engineering. It was almost a nation state thing. But with software, all you have to have is coding skills. And so what we're seeing is organizations finding a target, most recently 3CX. It's one of the most
3CX, right?
One of the most popular phone suppliers. I think they have 600,000 customers, something like that. Presumably a nation-state attacker did some research and figured out what libraries 3CX was using to assemble the software that made their phone systems work. They said they identified one library in particular that they thought they could get to. They social engineered their way into that project, introduced the code that had the effect of creating backdoors. They watched 3CX consume that into their infrastructure, and now all of a sudden they have this incredibly powerful backdoor that only they know about because they engineered it through the supply chains.
And then it affected other supply chains potentially as well.
It affected basically, it affected everyone who was using that library. But by way of 3CX, it gave them a footprint onto all of the networks that 3CX sat on. So they could effectively pull information out of 600,000 organizations by way of that one compromise of that one open source project.
The power of vulnerabilities in the supply chain is unlike anything I think we've seen, and you just illustrated too. I know I was with Kevin Mandia yesterday from Mandia talking about...
Well, they did a lot of analysis on that project.
And also SolarWinds as well, which was another whole supply chain attack that could affect, I think, tens of thousands of customers in that example. Talk a little bit about what government is starting to do, because now we're starting to see a little regulation coming in the area, and you and I have been around this for a long time. We haven't seen a lot of that. Maybe say a few words about what we're seeing with SBOMs and things like that that are really important too.
Yeah, SBOMs, software bills of material, are basically the ingredient list on a food label, right? So if I'm selling you a piece of software, especially if you're the federal government, you should want to know what's in it. In part so that if there's another Log4j or if there's a supply chain attack, you can know that you're affected and you can take actions in advance of me providing you with a patch or a different version. And so the White House and other agencies around the federal government have taken a real interest in these software supply chains because we're so reliant on them globally. I know you know this, but we're the caretakers of Maven Central, which is the primary distribution infrastructure for Java open source components. This year we'll serve 1 trillion downloads to 15, 20 million developers. I mean, and so the usage of these things is just massive.
Yeah. How do you start to see, I see the same thing starting to happen in the world of data models and AI, and now, GitLab and GitHub and others now having the same thing where it's downloading code, that code's maybe in the form of data models. How does Sonatype cross into the world of AI as well? And what do you see there as an opportunity for you?
Yeah, I'm reluctant to talk about AI because it's so fashionable, but we've had to embrace AI for years. Basically what we're looking for is suspicious behavior. In credit cards, if I make 2 gasoline purchases at the same time at 2 different stations, it triggers an alert. For us, we have to watch every commit event across all of the open source ecosystems across the world looking for suspicion. So if I'm a committer on a popular open source project and I make a bug fix to an algorithm, and then a week later I make a bug fix to a very different part of the code, that's interesting. That might be suspicious. And so that's easy to do if you're watching 1 or 2 a week. We're watching millions a day. And so the only thing that would have any chance of keeping up with that kind of dynamic load is our machines and machine learning.
I've talked about the power, the 3 things I see in the best companies in cyber, the power of the crowd, cloud, and AI. And you have all 3 of those, and you have it at scale, and you've been able to grow. What do you see coming in the future for Sonatype? Where do you see this company going at this point? You've had great success so far. What's the journey to like the 500 million mark or the billion mark? What do you see happening there?
The market that we serve, and it depends on how you count it. Sometimes the bankers drive me a little crazy about how they count it. But the way I look at it is globally we spend about $2 trillion a year on software development. I would like to think that what we do makes that a lot more efficient, makes it a lot more maintainable. Certainly aligns what organizations need in terms of achieving their goals. And so in the context of a $2 trillion spend, any percentage of that is a meaningful number. So our focus, there's absolutely a lot of cyber benefit to what we do, but our ultimate goal is to help organizations become very much more effective at innovating. And that mitigates a lot of the risk that we worry about as cyber professionals, but it all gives the business unit leaders, the folks who want to differentiate and win in their markets, better tools and better advantages to do that.
What's your tagline again? It's develop code fearlessly. I might get it wrong.
Develop fearlessly, yes.
Develop fearlessly. I just love that tagline for your company. Really fun. Talk a little bit about, just for a minute, the culture that you've created. You've been a founder now 3 times. Mm-hmm. You've built some amazing companies in the multi-billion dollars. Like, what culture from the top do you drive? I love the X factor of the CEO part. Like, what do you drive?
This is going to sound kind of cliche, but I love working with people that are smarter than I am. A low bar.
Yeah. But, yeah, right.
But no, it's incredible the people that I've had a chance to work with. Marty Resch at SourceFire is an example. Brian Fox here at Sonatype. Yeah. Dave Renson back at Riverbed. I mean, just brilliant people with creative minds and a real interest in solving problems that people care about.
It's so fun to see you, my friend, humble, honest, hardworking, 20 years later, still doing it. But I think this one's your best ever. My opinion. Sonatype is in the perfect storm of the biggest vulnerabilities, the biggest problems we're seeing in the world of supply chain. I wish you the best of luck, and thank you for coming on my show, my
Dave,
friend.
Thanks so much.
Awesome. See you, Wayne.
So good to see you.